Hello and welcome back to Snapping Towels, another late night edition for episode 7. I'm Cam Williams, joined by my partner, as always, Kyle Foote. However you may be listening, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, soon to be Apple Podcasts, thank you for making us part of your day. Kyle, talk to me.
Absolutely. These late night traditions are becoming a fun part of my day. And for those of you listening on Spotify that can't see us right now, Cam is in his bathroom appropriately sitting next to some hung towels with amazing acoustics coming out of the bathroom. So if his is sounding better, you know why.
Yeah, life of a poor New Yorker sharing a studio apartment with his girlfriend, stuck in the bathroom, which doubles as my office and podcast studio as of late. But yeah, I couldn't be more excited here to talk about this past weekend of Lax and a couple midweek games. We're coming at you a little bit late this week. Appreciate the patience. But yeah, crazy weekend and already a massive upset on Tuesday night Lax.
No, this was an episode I was itching to get out because of just the caliber of play that was going on this weekend and the matchups we talked about last week. It was a must-do show for us here at Snapping Towels. So I'm excited to dive into it, starting off with UVA, UNC right off the bat.
Hell of a game on Thursday Night Lax. Thursday Night Lax needs to be an every week thing. We've discussed it before. Um, just a great opportunity for the game to showcase under the lights, national TV, two blue chip programs, incredible athletes, incredible players all over the place. Unfortunately, ESPN kind of screwed the pooch here, as we like to say, and didn't air almost the entire first quarter. So we missed a combined 8 goals. When we finally got dialed in, it was 5-3.
I want to start off by saying, because last episode we pretty much had a funeral for Anish on his broadcasting days of lacrosse, because we dug up some Carolina Panthers sideline reporter information that was falsely given to us, leading us to believe that he would not be calling games with the crew this
No,
year, which was sad news.
it was devastating news here at Snapping Towels. Just want to make it clear he is going to be the
He's
local
back.
radio announcer. He is going to be the local radio announcer for the Carolina Panthers in the 2022 season. I can confirm that both Quint and Kark congratulated him on the air, but looks like he's back for at least some games this year. I think this one in particular, because it was somewhat local for him, being a Charlotte guy. But yeah, I mean, so Kyle and I, as everybody, every ESPN viewer, missed the first quarter. Therefore, we missed the pregame. So we missed kind of the rush of seeing Anish, being introduced to Anish, and we get just put in with 2 minutes left in the first quarter, and we're hearing a voice that sounds eerily familiar. Kyle and I are texting each other saying, "Oh my God, is this Anish? Is Anish back? Is he back?"
He's back.
Yes, we had to acknowledge, we had a baseless funeral for Anish's lacrosse commentary career last week. We're going to go ahead and retract that. Anish is back in full force. Having those three squished in a tiny booth was quite the pleasure. But aside from what was going on in the booth, really, really a hell of a game on the field.
Absolutely. Honestly, back to the booth. Kark's imitation of Kevin Warren was hilarious.
It was unbelievable.
They were just going back and forth, and then touched a little bit on the Hughes Hopkins game that Kark and Quint were going to be doing together. We're talking a little trash about that. So just all in all, a great vibe, and that's really who you want calling the biggest game of the weekend right off the bat. I thought that was electric, but moving into the game, which is what we want to talk about more than the broadcasting, even though here at Savvy Towels, we do appreciate a killer broadcast. The game was electric. It was really tight until the end.
Yeah, it was kind of a tale of two halves. The first half, I mean, it's clear to me that UVA can play and win in any way possible. The first half really kind of lent itself into UNC's hands, right? There's a lot of unsettled. There were a ton of possessions, a lot of shots early in the shot clock, a lot of unsettled, a lot of fast breaks. Whereas the second half, UVA kind of slowed it down, longer possessions. And really, if you think about it, a game that's played so much in the gray, so much in the unsettled, is really going to lend itself to the team, going to play right into the hands of a team with a really strong attack unit, average midfielders, and below average close defensemen. That's UNC, right? They want their attack to have as much of a fingerprint on the game as possible. Whereas in the second half, UVA slowed it down, kind of exposed UNC's close defense a little bit more. And on the flip side, it turned into more settled possessions for UNC when they actually had the ball. And at that point, you pretty much can only rely on those three attackmen beating their defensemen one-on-one, or you're kind of hoping and praying that your somewhat suspect, just average midfield is going to create a lot of opportunities for you. Yeah. And, UVA's got players everywhere, and they can score anyway in transition or in the settled offense.
Yeah, I think a player that really put his stamp early on this game for UNC that made it a close game for a long time was Matt Wright. He covered Schellenberger, kept him quiet till he got his opportunities. Matt Wright running LSM, guarding an attackman, wasn't out there for every time Schellenberger touched the ball, but majority of the time he was. I thought he did a terrific job on him. And then picking up guys in the middle of the field and hawking them down, creating a sick amount of turnovers in the middle of the field was nothing short of impressive. I thought it was a good game plan on UNC to honestly do that, to get
great move
a slow start going for Schellenberger. Also, you just don't have the bodies that close that you feel comfortable guarding three All-American attackmen, and that came to be the difference when Matt Moore started just taking his guy to the cooker. And as a freshman, played well, played hard. Can't remember his name, number 90. He's a thick guy. He's going to be good, but I think the depth that Virginia has at attack, having three guys that are extremely comfortable taking people to the cooker, is what was the difference down the stretch. And it was a close game, even though the score is a little lopsided. I thought it was a close game until halfway through the fourth quarter. And I thought an interesting thing as well was Virginia late in the game, primarily the second half, ran with just three midfielders. And we saw the resurgence of Jeff Connors. I haven't seen him all year. He was a number one recruit in his class. He's been a starter for 2-3 years, and we haven't seen him on the field. So I was wondering if something was nagging him, and this was the first we saw him. But he looked good too, and they rolled him out in spurts.
Good to see him back. Guy's got an absolute hammer. I'm really glad you brought up Matt Wright. Could not have been more impressed with him. I knew he was a very good player for them, but just seeing him down at close defense, guarding somebody, the caliber of Schellenberger and doing the job that he did was incredibly impressive. I didn't realize he was quite as fast as he is. I think it's safe to say, yeah, it's unbelievable. And
he's got a knee brace on, so I wonder what's going on there. If it's like something that's like he can play through, but he's going to get a little fixed up in the off season. I think last year he was an immediate eye opener, and this year is just no surprise what he's doing.
Yeah, he's an incredible stick as well, and a knack for creating turnovers, an absolute vacuum on the ground. I think he's a shoo-in for Team Canada. I mean, it's like they're not exactly, I think Kark mentioned that. Or no, sorry, I think Quint mentioned that.
No, Kark mentioned. Yeah, they were talking about it.
They were talking about it, and it was like, and they kind of had to think for a second, and when you really think about it, like, Canada's not exactly, sure, they've had some excellent polls, but it's not exactly a defensive factory. Of course, Brody Merrill, but it's not exactly a defensive factory. If they can get their hands on a young, fast guy like Wright, I think it's a great addition for Team Canada this summer, and could really, really give the U.S. some problems for sure. Kid's a stud.
Yeah, Colin Cregan, that too, kept him in it. He was a monster. But on the other side, Matt Nunes also really stole a couple from UNC early that, UVA was never going to be out of the game. Also Schellenberger is a knockdown shooter. As we know, he can rack up the points, but the efficiency in his stroke is the difference with a good shooter to a great shooter, and how you rack up all those. He never misses because his movement is simple, and it keeps the ball very consistent. He doesn't have he has a quiet stick, as we like to say, which is almost like a less is more, and it just causes for an extremely, as a tight stroke. It's a lot of core, and he just snaps it off his shoulder really anywhere on the cage. I think it's an absolute nightmare for goalies, and it's also humming. So I think that was the difference maker in the long run. But the goalies played great. I mean, Matt Nunes continues to show up every week.
Kid's disgusting. I mean, the fact that he's a freshman doing what he's doing in the ACC right now, I know he's probably, the anchor of the best roster in the country, which definitely helps, but you got to give the kid a hell of a lot of credit. Quint said something in the beginning of the game, and I hope, we can get a fan to confirm this. Maybe we'll talk to Quint later this year. Who knows? But Quint said that Nunes played midfield as late as 10th grade. And the goalie on the team forgot his cup, so he jumped in the cage, and the rest is history. That's what Quint said on the broadcast. I hope that's true, because that'd be an absolutely incredible story. It sounds too good to be true, but I couldn't be more impressed with Nunes. The kid's just an absolute stud. But to go back to the tale of two halves, I mean, close game in the first half, really tight game back and forth in the first half. UVA outscored UNC 5-0 in the third quarter, and UNC didn't score their first goal until 9:33 remaining in the fourth.
Yeah. They had looks though.
They had a few looks, Kyle, but UVA outshot UNC 18-5 in the third quarter. I mean, it was kind of unbelievable what UVA did in the second half. And P. LaSala looked like P. LaSala in the second half. Really took over. And then when UVA got the ball, they just were incredibly patient. Weren't shooting early in the shot clock. And really kind of made it so that the UNC possessions were few and far between, and they pretty much had to capitalize when they got the ball.
There was a play I got texted about, I think it was in the first half, might have been the second half, where Dixon caught one out of the box, and he was kind of running in, and then he just put his stick down and ran to the box. What I'm going to assume, and we'll get him on Snapping Towels, and we'll ask him this question, I assume the ball hit his sidewall funky and broke it. And he just had a broken stick. So that's where I'm like, no, it's not a shaft. No ref can see your stick broke, So why don't you just throw it down the wing and hit the bench?
Yeah, but you don't know what's good with that, like how badly the sidewall is broken.
Yeah.
Roll,
get it out of there. Like,
sure, but if you ever had a shattered sidewall, it's hard to get a pass off. If it's somewhat broken, you can maybe get to somebody and flip it.
Coach, I don't care if you have to run that thing down to the end line behind the cage and drop your stick there and be like, oh, I just noticed, and then hit the box. Dropped it on the 50 in the middle of like UNC.
Look, you got to give the kid some credit for just following the rules so blindly. I mean, it was kind of incredible. It was like a reflex.
I got a text about it. I was like,
But it was odd.
It has to be. I've never seen that before in my career. So it was something. I'm assuming a stick break, but it's also interesting. I wonder if Lars brings that up in the film room the next week and is like, hey man, like, just so you know, I love the abidance of the rules, but can we put it in our advantage a little bit? Can we have a little?
Don't drop it at the 45 and give Matt Wright like a free run on a fast break with the best attack in the country.
Yeah, a little ignorance is bliss kind of thing. But we'll ask him about it. We'll see what happens. That's what we assume here on Snapping Towels, to be determined. Overall, entertaining game. Fireworks were had. I thought UNC's midfield was the difference. They continued to miss shots down the stretch, and they were getting them, I think, more. I know the shot chart is insane, but the 5 they did get were quality. I also think a credit to that is no Cade Sawstead for Virginia this week. We saw the bad injury. No articles are out about the injury. I think, it's kind of maybe one of those things that they don't want to face is what happened. But it was interesting to see him not in the lineup and not really talked about on the broadcast. And he's just their clear number one
I don't
guy.
think it was mentioned once on the broadcast.
They might have said it once because that big giraffe they love talking about, 39, the pole, that was a big basketball recruit. I forgot his name. Let me get that up. But he was all over the field. So they were talking about
Virginia's polls are massive. And that was actually what that was what spurred the Kevin Warren impersonation from Carcaterra. They were talking about Virginia's massive polls, and they were saying that, I think Quint said, yeah, I remember talking to Kevin Warren, and he was saying he called like Virginia's D like playing against Jurassic Park. Yeah, it's like playing Jurassic Park, and then Carcaterra stepped in and said, no, that's not how we say it. It's like playing Jurassic Park. It's like playing Jurassic Park.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
It's pretty
good. His name's Cole Kastner, from Palo Alto area. Shout out to Tam High. Those schools up there playing good ball. A product of the Bay Area. Look, he's a monster.
An absolute
unit. The polls for Virginia make plays regardless of Cade Stossett being in. I thought he is a difference maker though, and you noticed he was on the field. So overall,
Virginia's still able to get the 15-11 W though. So
entertaining game.
UVA with a marquee win heading into a massive game against Maryland. And speaking of Maryland, look, they didn't get a headline win against Albany. They just went in and took care of business like Maryland does. I think the final score was 24-6. Usual suspects showed up for Maryland. For Maryland, Wisnauskas had 2-4, Donville 3-2. Not much to really unpack here, but it's worth noting we have maybe the most anticipated college lacrosse regular season game in recent memory this coming weekend with Maryland and UVA. And for Maryland to just come out and absolutely just close the book, take care of business, no questions asked against Albany, not look ahead at all, just kind of speaks to that almost Patriot-esque mentality that we've mentioned before. This Maryland team is an absolute machine on a mission, and I just cannot wait to see them play UVA this weekend.
I mean, if you listen to our interview, Snapping Towels with Brendan Donville, they're all business, and that comes through the microphone when he's talking. So we'll talk about that game later. There were a couple cold ones this weekend. Michigan-Harvard was one of them. Looked freezing.
Yeah, Michigan-Harvard. It looked absolutely miserable out there. I don't miss that. The sun poked through at times.
Oh my God, that's just for the broadcast.
My Ivy League with another clean sweep, 6-0. Dartmouth did not play, but yeah, starting out with this Michigan-Harvard game. Look, I was really impressed with Harvard. I picked Michigan to win last week. Maybe I was kind of trying to make up for my lack of love for the Wolverines early on in the season. But look, Harvard looked really good. Honestly, I thought the teams were pretty evenly matched athletically, but Harvard was just more skilled across the board. Harvard's attack unit really, really impressed me. Early on, I was impressed by Zawada from Michigan. It's the first time I'd actually really watched Zawada play this year. He's a really nice size attackman. He has a stroke. I think he's clearly Michigan's best player. But honestly, like this Harvard team is pretty darn good. I mean, the three attackmen, midfielder Nick Loring is very, very good. Number 3, the kid at 2 and 5, he was all over the place, scoring in all different ways. And their attack unit is just super crafty. I really like Harvard a lot. What a surprise.
Harvard's good. And I think a big player on that Harvard team that doesn't get a lot of credit is their goalie is an absolute sicko, a guy we need to have on the pod. Kyle Mullen, 60% saves, almost 60% saves this week. I heard he worked in like a butcher factory this summer, some crazy shit like that.
We need to get him on.
I think it's a must. I think it's a must. I think he got offered by a lot of big schools. Hard to turn down Harvard. I think they're gelling at the right time. I think they play their guys. They don't try to get too complicated with it. One of those guys, Owen Gaffney, shout out Loyola, LA state champs last year. He's had a big start to his freshman campaign, was a big recruit out of the LA area, and he's really shown up for Harvard, kind of a dodging midfielder spark plug that can beat short sticks, and was really finding his stroke in that game versus Michigan. He really liked the net when he looked at it.
Yeah, another freshman to go along with him. Sam King had 3 and 3. I mean, the two had 11 points between them. And then they're accompanied by this kid, Hayden Cheek, who's a really skilled finisher inside, had a hat trick. He had a disgusting around the world. They're actually back-to-back around the worlds in this game. Bookend. It seemed like within 18, 20 seconds of each other, both a Michigan attackman and this kid, Hayden Cheek, stung.
I think there might be these both programs might not have it around the world the rest of the season, just for the listeners that don't understand how often this shit happens. And we saw it within 20 seconds. It was kind of like a half field fast break drill you do on a Thursday when you're getting ready for a game with your team, and you see it. You still don't even see that then. It's like completely
it's one thing to see it at like a back-to-back at like a PLL practice, or maybe, in like a really high level professional game, or maybe
sixes, World Sixes now.
Sure,
you probably see
World
them a little bit where it's like short field, short sticks, a lot of skill, but
this is just like a top 20 college game. Two solid teams, nothing crazy. I don't foresee either of these two teams in Final Four weekend. Maybe I'm wrong, but kind of a top 20 college game, and for there to just be two beautiful around the worlds within a span of 20 seconds was pretty special.
Yeah, and I think the difference was Michigan's offense kind of stalling. They had times, they had glimpses of great play, and then empty possession, and there was the consistent rhythm through 4 quarters, which is not surprising for a team that had such a lack of schedule early in the season. Kind of to see a good goalie with a good defense and to kind of stumble a little bit, but it was a little surprising because their offense has been clicking so well. So
it's a good point, though. They haven't really tested themselves, as we've talked about before, and to jump from the kind of the bunch of teams that they had scheduled in the first half of the year to a really good a surprisingly good Harvard team. And what's honestly just insane to think about is Harvard might be the 6th team in the Ivy League right now, depending on how you look at it. But Harvard's really good. Michigan was only able to generate 20 shots. I think they finished with 22, 23 shots. They got a few ditch effort shots off in the last 90 seconds of the game. With about 2 minutes left, Michigan had generated 20 total shots. That's not going to get it done. Honestly, Michigan's midfielders were having a really difficult time drawing slides and creating opportunities. They were also absolutely abysmal in the clearing game. Honestly, looked worse than Hopkins. I think they were sub 80% in the clearing game.
Hopkins did well this week in clearing, so clearly
that's true. That's true. Good point, Kyle. Clearing game was a huge bugaboo for the Wolverines, along with the subbing game. There were a couple of times it was kind of unbelievable, but they had a tough time getting organized defensively and early in possessions. Like they were late or slightly disorganized in the sub game, and it led to a bunch of 6-on-5 situations for Harvard. And as we mentioned, they're filled with crafty, skilled attackmen and midfielders. If you give those kids kind of unearned 6-on-5 situations, you're going to give up goals. And they honestly gave up 3 or 4 goals just because of their lack of subbing prowess. So honestly, I think if this game were to happen again, I think it's actually somewhat of an encouraging sign for Michigan. Yeah. That these are areas that can be improved upon, right? You can tighten up the subbing game, you can tighten up the clearing, and you can kind of make up some of those goals you gave up. And they're going to need to. They have a massive game against Notre Dame this weekend, and they head into Big Ten play.
Room to grow for Michigan is how I'll
Yeah,
leave it.
disappointing performance. I don't want to necessarily say it's a terrible, disappointing loss. I think Harvard's a good team.
Harvard's a good team.
They're better than I expected. I was pleasantly surprised by how good I thought Harvard was watching this game from start to finish. But as we've mentioned, Michigan's back half of the schedule is an absolute gauntlet. Again, Notre Dame this weekend, and then the Big Ten slate, which is absolutely no joke. So they're going to need to pick it up in the clearing game and the substitution game big time.
It's a bad timing for Michigan to have one of these, to have a an oops game or a mental lapse, which clearly this game was, clearing sloppy, not getting shots offensively, but still putting up 9 goals because of what happened in Ohio State and Notre Dame. And you play Notre Dame next week coming off a loss. You got to think.
What is Notre Dame right now? 1-4, 1-3?
Let me check that. But yeah,
Notre Dame is going to be hungry for a win, especially before ACC play. Look, I'm going to pick Notre Dame to win this game. I think I definitely will be the best opponent Michigan's played thus far. I think
by a lot, but we'll get into that.
Even though
later.
Harvard's having a nice year, Michigan.
We don't need to hammer Michigan right now for the Michigan fans. We have some optimism. Some crazy stuff has happened last weekend. Upsets happened. It's at Notre Dame, so we'll see. We'll talk about it. An Ivy League team that also made some noise. Princeton hosted the Scarlet Knights. You're calling the New Jersey Cup.
Exactly right. It's the New Jersey Cup. Wow, really impressive win by Princeton. I've been extremely bullish on Rutgers since episode 1. I still am. But wow, Princeton's depth of scoring is really impressive. I mean, this kid Coulter Mackesy, this freshman out of Brunswick with 4-2, a second career start, just has this massive breakout game against, I would say, a top 10 team against Rutgers. Is pretty incredible. When you've got who's their guy that went off last week for 4 goals? Slusher.
Oh yeah, Alex Slusher.
You got Slusher, who also had 4-2 in this game. Like, you have this legit 1-2 punch in Maxine Slusher now, and then you got Eric Peters coming again with 21 saves. Like, this Rutgers team is for real. They've got an excellent defense. I know. Yeah, sorry, Princeton. This Princeton team is for real. They've got an excellent defense, and I know it ended up being a pretty close game, but Princeton really dominated this game. Like, it was 16-9 midway through the fourth quarter. I just want to make that clear. Like, Princeton really came out and put the clamps on from the jump.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I saw Rutgers getting off the bus and Princeton kind of being on their heels, and then they flipped the script. Their offense started humming. I thought Princeton got away with one or got a sick look at the top of the key. Christian Ronda drilled one with a second left in the quarter that put Princeton up by a couple. Sorry, we're just talking about Harvard for like 30 minutes, so I have a couple real estates in my head. But I thought that was a turning point, put Princeton up by a couple, and they kind of just ran with it. He had 2 goals. Christian Ronda, shout out from the town, the program. 2 bombs. I think 1 lefty, 1 righty. He was a great attackman. Running out of the midfield just shows you how stacked the Princeton offense is. Also a Brunswick kid, so it was a little Brunswick party. Also, looking at that roster, they have like 6 kids from Brunswick. It's an appealing school to pull from, but geez.
Yeah, but if you look at the stat line, for Rutgers, like, it's really a testament to Eric Peters and Cage for Princeton and their defense. I mean, they really held like all these big guns in check. I mean, Bartolo was the only one that had like a nice stat line with a hat trick, but only on 27% shooting.
Yeah. The other kid I want to talk about for Princeton, Sam English, is the second amigo. It's him and Slusher, and then Chris Brown, Coulter, and then Rhonda and whoever they have fill in that day with a couple goals. is but it runs through Sam English and Alex Slusher. Rutgers, hot start, didn't have their I guess sidekick show up to the game necessarily in the stat sheet big, but I immediately looked to Kark's big board the PLL put out about drafts. Mitch Bartolo's nowhere on it. He's 6'6", 230 and shoots the
Pretty
pits out of the
surprising,
ball.
yeah.
I'm like, where's the love? It's because UPenn, it was quiet because COVID and like he doesn't have a lot of hype behind him. Talk about a PLL midi. This guy would be racking up the points. It's a no-brainer for me. Hopefully this goes viral or something just to get this kid a look, because he deserves to be in that league just from his frame and his skill set and how much he's produced his whole career.
We're gonna have Bartolo on the pod before the year's over.
Most definitely.
You guys will all get a piece of him. He'll take up pretty much the whole screen. But yeah, no, I think he's ready-made to be in the PLL. I think he could play either attack or midfield in the league, depending on the roster he would land on.
Let's face it, he's playing attack because he'd draw the best pull anyways. So why, like, you're not going to fool anyone.
Have to, yeah.
I like Penn's attack, so I'm not going to talk about Hanley, but you saw it, Hanley do it kind of in the first game, and they're like, let's keep our attackman out there and run him through the box. But you're not fooling anyone. You're going to get the best pull. So I thought that was kind of the story of this game.
Yeah, hell of a win for Princeton. Fun game. Another Ivy League team that just continues to impress is Cornell. I feel bad for Penn State. I mean, Penn State loses another heartbreaker. Look, Cornell is a serious squad that I wasn't taking quite as seriously at the beginning of the year, just because I didn't know a lot about them.
We didn't know a lot about them.
I knew Donville was gone.
Teat
and I knew, obviously Teat not there, but I didn't know a whole hell of a lot about them. But their depth of scoring is really, really impressive. I mean, it's a great sign for them. Kurse continues to play well with 2-2, but his running mates at attack. Look, Michael Long at 4-1. John Piatelli with 5 goals in this game. Like, honestly, I didn't even know who those two kids were before the year.
I think that's
each of them.
That's kind of like the buzzword with Cornell, like just no names on the back of the jersey, and kids just being super skilled and disciplined. Comes from good coaching. Connor Busick, which is good.
No.
I thought another impressive thing was, as we keep talking over each other, Penn State had 9 goal scorers. But
Penn State's good.
Their defense just continues to not show up. And then when their goalie shows up, he has like 30 saves and they squeak a win. But like defensively, this unit continues. If you go into a game thinking you could give up 16 goals and win, it's extremely difficult. That the A+ would be 10 to 11. But the higher that those get, the chances of you getting a win just drops tremendously. So I think the problem for Penn State continues to be this defense, this thorn.
Their defense and their schedule. I mean, I think they need to take a few of Michigan's games, right? They need to play at Cleveland State here or there. I mean, they just keep playing absolute hammers of games. And I love
they played,
other than Lafayette.
Villanova, St. Joe's, Vermont.
St. Joe's, Penn, Yale, Cornell. No, sorry, not St. Joe's. Villanova, Penn.
They just lost to Bucknell last night.
That's true.
They lost to Vermont.
Another heartbreaker to Bucknell.
Okay, in their losses, Villanova, they lost. They let up 13. Vermont, they let up 16. St. Joe's, they lost. They let up 15. They show up against teams that, really have. I mean, they've won 2 games, so Yale. It's kind of looking
like that 10-6 win against Yale was a bit of an anomaly. Only giving up 6 goals.
Sometimes offenses have those kinds of days.
And I think Fayok had like 21 saves in that game. He continues to go off. I mean, he had 16 saves in this game. It's almost like throw the guy a bone here.
Exactly. But, it's so they lose to Cornell, they give up 16, they lose to Bucknell on 12 and Penn on 10. It's just kind of they're averaging probably 14, giving up 14 a game.
Yeah, I think they gave up 16 to Lafayette.
Take Yale out of the equation, it's probably 14 or 15 a game. But
Yeah,
with Yale in there, it might bring them down to 12 or 13, which is, bottom of the league. So clearly that continues to trump Penn State's season thus far.
I think they're 2-6, which is just not a good place to be. I mean, Penn State's out unless they win the Big Ten. They're out.
Yeah.
But this loss to Bucknell last night, it's over for them unless they win the Big Ten. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, a team they played pretty well. Penn Villanova was named the Farrell Cup this year due to a tragedy that happened over the summer involving a Manhasset family. The Farrells, brother James was a captain at UPenn, and a brother Michael, who was a Villanova student, were in this horrific accident, ended in death. Tragedy on the island, tragedy in these programs. So they named the game after him, and it was a burner. It was a kid. You could see the kids were playing with a little bit more on their mind than the usual game.
Yeah, they had a little extra juice. Really, just a terrible situation. Every parent, every friend's nightmare what happened this summer. Really, really cool, really special. They now have this event. Great for the kids, great for the programs, great for the families, particularly the Farrell family. Kind of an annual event to really remember two amazing lives. But for lacrosse fans, another classic game drummed up. Penn Villanova, two great programs, crosstown rivals. Yet another heartbreaking loss for Villanova. Nova was up 7-6 late. I think less than 2.5 minutes left in the game. Penn wins another one in dramatic fashion. Gergar buries one at the buzzer at the point on a fast break, low to high. I just love Dylan Gergar's game. But yeah, the cardiac Quakers at UPenn continue to find a way to win late, no matter what the circumstance is. I think this Penn team is Final Four or bust.
Absolutely. I think they have it throughout the whole field. They got in the middle of the field. They're extremely disciplined on offense, get great shots. A lot of their guys are in high shooting percentages. But a kid that continues to score and get shots whenever he wants is Patrick Daley. And he's a senior. If I was a PLL team, that's a under the radar guy I would easily pick up.
He's a name to watch for sure. Yeah.
Invite to training camp. I see all these names on these big boards and stuff. It's like these, kind of like a Dan Beccaro kind of cat, who was a Georgetown attack
great player
midfielder,
at Georgetown, yeah,
who is now an Atlas player, a kid who could get a shot whenever, very shifty, quick, sick finisher.
All different ways, yeah.
So a guy like that is, I think, a no-brainer for a PLL team. Another guy this Patrick Daley reminds me of is the kid that came out of Cuse last year. I can't remember his name right now. Played for the Cannons.
Rafis?
Rafis. I think he was the rookie of the year, but
it's really good.
Yeah, so a kid I'd look at just off his stats and seeing his highlights for sure in this upcoming draft, which is exciting.
Really impressed by Penn's ability to win in different ways. I think that I feel really comfortable with them in a shootout and also in a rock fight. Like they can win this 8-7 game against a crosstown rival in an emotional game. And I also think, they could beat a Yale team 17-15, if need be. I really like Penn's ability to win games in different ways. And look, this Villanova team is no joke. They're going to make noise in the Big East. They could potentially get an at-large bid. I like Villanova. I think they're very, very dangerous.
I agree, especially with a lacking Big East. Obviously, it's going to be a bear of a Georgetown team late in that tournament, but It,
But if you lose in the championship to Georgetown, maybe say, let's say they beat Denver in the regular season and maybe they upset Georgetown in the regular season, lose to Georgetown in the championship of the Big East. Villanova's prime for an at-large bid and to ruin somebody's first round Saturday.
Yeah, I think it's tough, and we're going to talk about this later. But this is a thing. I'll just wait till we talk about it later. It's something you guys might have to stretch out the podcast and listen for. But I think with only wins versus Fairfield, Hofstra, and Penn State right now, it's not looking good unless you get to that. Unless you beat Drexel, Delaware, St. John's. Those are musts. Beat Denver because they're having
Denver's a must at this point.
Denver's a must. Providence, Marquette, and then Georgetown can be your only loss the last game of the season. Then your resume is good enough to then make it to that Big East championship and play a tight game versus Georgetown. Who knows? Maybe they'll win. We're not calling it out here, but chances are against them. Georgetown's ridiculously stacked and our favorite to win the Big East. But I think they could have a large bid.
Yeah, no, we like Villanova here on Snapping Towels. Another team we like is Yale. Yale flies out to Denver, beats a solid Denver team, a slightly down year for Denver, but a solid Denver team, 16-13 in the altitude. Brandau registers 5-3. The kid is on fire. And Leo Johnson coming through with a hat trick, a budding star for the Yale Bulldogs, one of Kyle's favorite players. Really
Absolutely.
continues to show up big in big-time games, which is really encouraging for Yale.
Yeah, no, he's a gamer. He's looking thick, looking strong. I guess that's that college program, but his feet are great. He moves extremely well, and he has a six stick with both hands. So just a good win for Yale on the road. Denver continues to struggle. We've seen him struggle all year. Are we surprised here on Snapping Towels? No, probably called it, but it is what it is. Ohio State, Notre Dame, we didn't call.
I think I actually called that.
I'm wrong. Cam called it. Kyle,
I think I chose the Buckeyes to win in our quick picks last week.
You took the hometown team. I remember that now.
I did roll with the Buckeyes. Look, I like what the Buckeyes have this year in Columbus. It's like Jack Myers is just a perfect ex-attackman. And then, Jackson Reed out of the midfield. I think Jackson Reed might be one of my favorite players in the country. Really slick lefty midfielder. Just an excellent Canadian. Speaking of Team Canada, he'll be on it for sure. But look, those two are a really dangerous tandem, and for them to put up, 13 combined points in a massive game against Notre Dame, win 14-11, huge statement. Ohio State continues to rack it up. Ohio State's prime for a serious run in the Big Ten and may give Maryland a run for their money.
Yeah, I had a couple problems with this game. One, it looked cold as could be. This game looked worse than Harvard, Michigan. Probably comparable temperatures realistically, but in the shoe.
Yeah, not everybody's out in LA, Kyle. For our listeners, Kyle was in Tahoe this weekend, just absolutely just living in the powder.
T-shirt.
Exactly, skiing in a T-shirt while the rest of the country was under a winter storm watch from Friday to Sunday night.
Yeah, I didn't know much about that, but I do know seeing breath out of the helmet's not a good sign, and you saw a lot of that during this game. Listen, the problem started when Notre Dame was coming up with this game plan to short stick Jack Myers, a seasoned quarterback for Ohio State's offense.
Makes zero sense. Really surprising coming from Corrigan.
And stuck with it. He had 3 off the bat, and it was like, no. And he's still getting it in the fourth quarter. I'm like, the hard-headedness where you don't come in at halftime, they were still in it after this crazy debacle at the last second of a clock I'll talk about, but they were still in the game at the half. It was 1-goal game, maybe even tied. I don't understand the hard-headedness to stay with this disgusting matchup. Like who does Ohio State have at the midfield that threatens you as much as probably one of their leading point scorers in program history?
Program history, yeah. Aside from Jackson Reed, the answer is nobody.
Why? So why the double pull? I don't get it. It was clearly like they were trying to match, feet with a short stick that kind of had a bigger frame. He was probably the happiest kid in Columbus on that day because
Bad move.
I don't think it's probably ever happened in his career. And
it'd be one thing to do it to him as like a freshman, but the kid he's a household name at this point. He's seen.
You're not gonna go short stick a man. Right.
He's seen everything
and let him just look over this cat and feed these guys for step downs. It was happening all game. It also happened in the Duke Loyola game. We'll get to that next, but. Did you see the end of the third quarter? This Ohio State
It was brutal.
Kid,
walk us through it.
I wish I took down the name of this kid who shot it, but Ohio State player gets it at the 50 with like 0.5 seconds on the clock, maybe 1.5. I don't even know. Hucks it at the goalie. The clock is just so blatantly 0. Rebounds off the goalie, which once it touches the goalie, it's dead. Play's dead. You're going in fourth quarter. Rebounds off the goalie, picks it up by Jackson Reed, picks it up off the crease, dunks it, has enough time to dunk it. Or he might have flicked it in. It was probably quicker than dunk. But the refs come in, no eyes on the clock, give the goal. I mean, it seemed like all the Notre Dame kids were kind of like Entenmann reacted. He didn't even know the clock was at 0. He just thought it happened. But the distance, I played in the shoe a couple times, the distance between the clock and the ref is absurdly long. Like the clock is up in these rafters of the football stadium and the shot clock is on the field. So they're not necessarily looking up at the scoreboard. And then my second thing is like, why aren't we reviewing end of the quarter plays when you have the TV timeout and you have the play and then you come out fourth quarter, the goals erased? Like no one would care,
Yeah, so I can. It was brutal, and I'm really happy that Kyle brought up the point of playing in the horseshoe, and that was probably the reason for that. Just like the physical setup of the stadium and the jumbotron scoreboard situation. Kyle, go ahead.
I mean, just getting railroaded by refs in Columbus is no strange tale. I think that happens pretty much every time a team walks in there. It's absurd the refs they find out there.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, no, I don't. It's I have a lot to say about that. But just talking about the stadium issue, it was in 2002. Ohio State built this beautiful stadium, the Jesse Owens Stadium, and it was going to be a soccer lacrosse stadium. Just wonderful stadium for college lacrosse, perfect size stands, everything.
They played the Big Ten championship there, like Rambo's senior year.
Yeah,
I think it was probably 2016 or
16 or 17. I think it was
Killer.
17. It was electric, really really cool. In the early 2010s, late 2000s, probably like 2008 to 2012. Ohio State lacrosse program made a big push to have as many games. I think they might have played all their home games in the shoe that weren't inside in the Woody Hayes facility, but they made a big push to play in the shoe. They saw it as a recruiting tool, something to really kind of like legitimize the program. Hey, we play in the horseshoe. We play in one of the most legendary football stadiums of all time. Look, that's very. There is something special about that, but for the game of lacrosse and the amount of fans that a game, particularly in Columbus, Ohio, is going to draw, playing at Jesse Owens is just such a better product on TV and at the game. Like
atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly. Being in the horseshoe, I've been there many times. I've seen many lacrosse games there. I've seen many football games there. It seats 107,000 people. The lacrosse game draws, if it's not right before the spring game, football game, it draws.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that spring game.
Yeah, if it's right before the spring game, you're going to have a lot of fans not there to watch lacrosse. But even if you scratch 8,000 to 10,000 for a lacrosse game, the stadium looks empty.
We had a Elite Eight game there.
Yeah, you had a quarterfinal game there. I was there
twice. We went twice to the quarterfinals. One year we played Towson. One year we played Ohio State. Felt empty.
Yeah,
And it was
you
probably
could have
like
a great lacrosse
9,000
crowd.
people there.
Exactly, 9,000 for a lacrosse game is a hell of a crowd, and that would look and sound and feel so good at Jesse Owens. It really is so underwhelming, in my personal opinion, and I think Kyle's too, in the horseshoe. And also, it led to this. It's not practical. Like there are too many calls that need to be made where the ref needs to have eyes on the clock and the field in the game of lacrosse, and to be playing in one of the biggest stadiums, not only in the country but in the world, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
It was
I will say it's worked for Nick Myers and the Buckeyes. They've had a great 6-7 year stretch. So,
well, yeah, I'm not going to get into the refs at Ohio State, what they pull in there. What Nick Myers does to them on the sidelines is up there with Bill Tierney, I will say. But the ludicrousness that happened, I don't even know if that's a word, but that it's not even looked at. Roger that. It's not even looked at. Like they're just like, oh, goal. It's like the kid hucked it from the 50. How much time is left? Like it was like
it was unfortunate.
It sucked. But let's not let that take it away from the game. Ohio State executed a better game plan than Notre Dame from front to back, and with all the excuses out there, I thought Notre Dame was inconsistent on offense with a lot of empty possessions. I thought BVB did a sick job guarding Pat Cavanaugh, as he's been doing, and he's starting to get some notoriety for it in the league.
Yeah, he looks like a polished defenseman out there.
It's great.
Which is
we gotta
really
have him
awesome
on the pod.
to see.
We've got tons of questions.
We gotta have him on the pod. I don't. Again, we hold ourselves accountable here on Snap and Towels. We say when we're wrong, but Kyle and I dubbed him as a player to watch back in January being a homeschooled kid out of North Carolina. Big recruit,
given 44, the number on defense at Ohio State, which is interesting. I feel like they've had one good defenseman in the last 10 years that I could think of that has worn that number. But
now they have two. And
he's making it rain.
No, he's making it rain. One thing I'll say about Notre Dame, it's nice to have so many goal scorers. They had 9 goal scorers, but they all had – I don't think anybody had more than one – I think one player had – I think who's the midfielder, the big kid?
Dobson had 2.
Great. Dobson had 2.
Eric Dobson
he's the only he's the only player with 2. You need somebody to take over a game.
Yeah.
Notre Dame has nobody that's taking over games, and it's concerning.
Jacoboys did at the end of their last game a bit, but it ended up in a loss.
But even so, that was too little too late. I think he ended up with 2-1. They've got nobody who's coming out with a 4-1 game.
It's a little bit of I feel like the Cavanaughs are so talented and so good that people just kind of want to give them the ball. And it's interesting because their skill set is super feeding oriented and all or nothing play oriented. So it drums up for this inconsistent offense where there's no midfielders beating short sticks, which they're very capable of doing, and cracking the offense. There's this kind of, either, take your guy and I'll take my guy. It's that kind of ball right now, but I think they'll be drummed up, ready to go for Michigan next weekend. That's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
Maybe a bigger upset. Definitely a bigger upset. How about the Hounds?
Yeah, the 1-4 Hounds.
Coach Dino and Corrigan called each other about this massive game plan they were going to have for these two teams. It's insane.
Yeah. For our listeners who aren't aware, we talked about Corrigan short-sticking Jack Myers at Ohio State, stud attackman Kevin Lindley for Loyola also received a short stick for the majority of the game against Duke. Did not work out well. I believe Lindley ended up with 6
only on the first half. He got a pull in the second half. He had 6.
He had 6 in the first half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
he had 6 goals in the first half.
I don't know why they didn't get out of it in the first quarter, but that's they don't pay me the big bucks. Also a program leader in goals in history. So when you just look at that volume of how fast and how good he is at pumping them in the net, I see why you'd want to short stick him. He might not be their main offensive threat dodging a number 1 or 2 pull, but I've seen this kid bury so many goals on pulls in practice and games that when you see him kind of go out there and get a short stick, you got to think he's just salivating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because even if you throw it into him, he's got it. He doesn't have a 6-foot steel pole coming down on his wrist every time he's cutting. It's just like a whole mindset.
I mean, I've always been a big Kevin Lindley fan. I was really impressed with him on Sunday. Scored in pretty much every possible way you could score on a lacrosse field.
Yeah.
Just putting a short stick on, again, like we talked about Jack Myers being a senior attackman, man who's seen it all. He's seen all different looks. I mean, Lindley, like, again, he's not some freshman puppy out there who doesn't know what to do if he has a college short stick on him. Like, he's going to take this kid to the rack. He's going to create opportunities for himself and for others right off the bat.
No, absolutely. I thought Duke's goalie, Blanket Adler, he played great. It really was this coaching decision to do that. Also, another thing that comes to my mind on why you would do it is like you don't need to double pull the midfield. And I guess they were worried about Evan James, who really ripped him up in the quarterfinals last year. So it's kind of one of those things going off the film from last year. I'm sure they thought it was going to work out. But it's a new year, and it's a new half of the season for the Hounds after that win. I feel like it's a Georgetown-esque win. We'll get into talking about that in our interview coming up. But it's a signature win for Charlie Toomey and the Hounds. Matt Dewan coming up with a killer defensive game plan. Their short stick D middies showing up, really forcing the Duke offensive middies to beat them. And then Ryan McNulty doing his thing in the middle of the field, which we haven't really seen yet this year. He's a great defenseman, but we haven't seen him really get out and transition and run as we like to do. And he came up with a sweet little yo-yo goal.
Yeah, huge goal from McNulty. Absolutely roped it past him. I mean, this game, it wasn't close. I think the final score was 12-10.
I'll get to the later of the game.
I think, for the first 54 minutes of play, Loyola absolutely dominated. I mean, it was 12-3 with 6 minutes left in the game. One thing I will say about Duke, encouraging sign for them. Brennan O'Neill kind of got back in his groove. I think he ended up with 4 goals.
Yes, but they're super spread out. Like he
scored the first 2.
Yeah, he scored the first 2, looking like it might be one of those days for him. And then his last 2 came late in the fourth quarter when the game was wrapped. So it was kind of one of those things where the Duke shooters liked what they saw. They weren't really getting their looks from this Loyola defense that really clamped down. I thought the defense.
Loyola's goalie credit too. He had a better game than he's been having. I don't think he was like above 55%, but he was a big improvement.
He made saves. He made some big saves when he needed to, a couple off the shin. But I think you look at Loyola's defensive personnel and you see kind of who they had guarding who. I was really impressed with the game plan. I think it really threw this Duke offense for fits till some Duke dad had to slip Dino 100 to put in that third line that cranked out 5 goals in the last 6 minutes. Get those kids some burn down in Durham. That's when you're like a first or second liner and you're just like, oh.
I think it'll be interesting to see moving forward what Duke does at the midfield. We know Nakai's spot is safe, but they weren't generating the looks.
McAdory was the only one that got in the fourth quarter, and they played him out attack. They took out Robertson.
They were not.
Or they took out Dyson Williams.
They took out Dyson Williams,
Yeah, they took out Williams. He's the first guy they pull on the attack for some God knows what reason. He had a goal. But Nakai, it's interesting who they went with late in the stretch. Those kids were hot. One McDonough kid, 91, came in and slung a couple goals for the hometown fans, but too little, too late. And I guess a takeaway for Duke is that you got a third line that can kind of score when the game doesn't matter late in the game.
Yeah, you got 9 midfielders. That's good.
But let's have on some hounds, and they're gonna talk to us about the win, because I've been jonesing to have some of my fellow compadres, running mates, on this thing to talk a little action. We've been waiting for this win to happen, so
they earned it.
Cam, why don't you toss them one of those towels behind you, and we'll get this interview rolling.
Roger that. Joining us are 2 seniors from the Loyola Greyhounds. We have attackman Aiden Olmstead and midfielder Dan Wigley, coming off a massive W against the 8th-ranked Duke Blue Devils this Sunday. Guys, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Boys, this is exciting for me as a Greyhound. Obviously, I've been waiting for you guys to get a big win to get you guys on here and talk a little bit about the magic that happens down at Ridley. But one question I wanted to jump in with is I've been in the locker room. I know what Chuck's about. I know his speeches. You guys have been there for pretty much a decade, right? So how has he been changing up his message and delivering it to you guys that have been around so much? Like, there's only so many rah-rah things he's got. I saw him throw a phone one time, so that was new. I think it was before your guys' time, but after the game, I think he told Dwani he had like an upgrade already, like in his back pocket, so he kind of sandbagged us. But what was he kind of giving you guys before the game and after?
Yeah, I mean, Coach always gives some good pregame talks, but he just said to, play for this week. He said play for somebody more than just in the locker room. We've been obviously having stretches of a couple losses, so we've been trying to work on ourselves. But he's like, play for somebody more than just in the locker room, and I resonated with the boys.
Yeah, I would say that not as much as the rah-rah throwing the phones, I would say, in my tenure here, but it was more that he kind of knew that we had a good week of practice building up to this, and just we really just needed to go out there and do the work.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, it started off hot from that ride, and then you guys kind of took it the rest of the way. But Wiggs, when you saw the back of Kev's helmet there, what were you thinking? You're just tossing up alley-oops, or did you think that was going to connect? Or were you trying to get him killed because he won't come on the podcast? All 3 answers work.
All 3 right there. But no, shot clock was running down, and kind of saw him get behind his man's helmet, and it's never really a bad idea to huck it into Kev on the inside, so it always plays.
Absolutely. I mean, something that jumped off the screen was Kevin getting short sticked. When you see that, are you just licking your chops, kind of like you're going to get some balls, or what'd you see out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's either you're going to throw it to Kevin without him having to get his arms chopped off, or he's capable enough dodger to beat a short stick, and it makes it easier on everybody else. So those are kind of the 2 options when he gets a shorty.
Amen.
Yeah, I'd be shocked to see another short stick on him this year, at least as much as we saw on Sunday after the performance he laid out on Sunday. But yeah, we discussed it. You guys returning from last year, a little bit of a slow start last year. I believe you guys started 5-5. This year, I think the 1-4 start. How valuable was it to have guys in the foxhole who have been through a slow start? And then last year, you guys come out with a massive win against Georgetown to kind of turn the whole season around. Were the vibes kind of the same going into this Duke game as Georgetown last year? How was it feeling?
Yeah, I'd say obviously when you're going through a tough stretch of games, having those big games on your schedule and being able to come out on top definitely is a momentum shifter. Obviously this week was spring break, so we put in a lot of hard hours, more than years past. So I think it kind of translated into Saturday, and coming into Patriot League play, it's a good thing to kind of have a little bit of confidence, but understand where that work came from. So,
yeah, I'd say last year was kind of our loss to Towson, which was kind of where our season kind of turned around. And then this year we lost to Towson again, and just another kick in the butt. But yeah, just to respond to that, it's kind of been nice, and just having some veterans in the locker room has helped.
Yeah, I can imagine. And honestly, what a privilege to play at Loyola and have such a star-studded schedule, right? You get to test yourselves every Sunday. If you have a disappointing loss against a Hopkins or a Towson, next week you have Duke on national TV. And for you guys to show out like that, I think really bodes well moving into Patriot League play. How are we feeling heading into conference play?
Yeah, we're feeling good. I know we play Bucknell on Saturday. They just had a gritty win over Penn State today. So Patriot League's looking good as it always has. So just always coming in ready to go. Can't take anything for granted.
Yeah, I would just agree with Aiden there.
Amen. All right, we're going to loosen it up a little bit. Dan, I'll let Cam ask this because I know it goes down at Loyola. So Cam, take this one away.
Girls in Baltimore, what do they like better, goals or assists?
Goals. No, assists.
Because he had an apple on Saturday. That's the proof is in the pudding. He's like, wait a sec, that actually works.
That might have been my first assist, honestly.
It's a pretty nice one. You put it right on his ear hole.
Yeah, no stranger to the big game, Dan. What's with it about the big time opponents where you decide to get shot out of a cannon and decide to put something in the back of the net?
I don't know. I guess it's just something that comes, but I would try to be more consistent. Honestly, I gotta have those games against not the Dukes or the UVAs, but something about the big stage, I guess. Kind of all the practice comes into play.
I love it. Let the instinct take over. That's what works in those kind of situations.
All right, hottest song in the locker room.
Oh, Wiggly's been on a streak lately in the locker room.
I'm sure this was already said on the pod, but Super Gremlin.
Well, we're going to need a new one because that's Maryland's hype song that came off.
Yeah,
on the pod.
that's unacceptable, honestly.
Pump it up in the locker room after the dub.
Pump it up.
Papos has been a big one recently.
Who's Papos by?
Let me pull that up. It's like some Spanish song.
Like it. Who's got the tunes as the 10 years? You guys relinquishing to any young bucks, or are you keeping it to yourself?
I would say
LeBlanc's been a 5-year starter on the Aux.
Yeah. Ever since your house, Footy, still have that picture of him.
Oh my God.
The team as a freshman started.
That's awesome.
I had a couple times at that house.
Absolutely.
Disastrous times.
Yeah. Yeah, I was always firing on the joint or a BPM back in the day when we always had Sirius. We didn't get the luxury. You guys can plug a phone in there now?
Yeah. The Bluetooth.
I don't know. The speaker in the back of your car was a luxury, I'll tell you that. Unless you were sitting in the trunk. Unless you were sitting in the trunk. You're not sure.
I know. For a little reference for listeners, Ridley is off campus, so you can't get there unless you have a ride. And I had quite a big sub the size of Wiggly's head in the back of my trunk. And we'd pile in, and there'd be someone with an ear next to the sub, and it always caused a ruckus. But yeah, it's good times. Got rid of it.
Do kids ever take public transport to Ridley?
No, there's a Loyola bus, but the schedule doesn't match up with any of the practice times. And I'm sure a couple kids have done it for a stretch, but it doesn't always work out.
There's always one freshman that might have to call an Uber because he decided to wait 5 minutes before we have to be in the film room to see if we can get a ride to practice.
That's a new thing. That wasn't around when I was there. You had kids running down. Oh my God, what's the road called? Cold Spring. Yeah, kids at Wires be running down Cold Spring trying to get there by the time everyone left to show face a little bit. But the old Wires, I guess there's a new Wires now. He's a pretty big force on defense. Talk to me about that guy a little bit.
You go against him every day, and you got this.
Yeah, obviously as a big Canadian, he lays quite a bit of lumber in practice. But he's been a beast for the past 4 years now. Just a really great cover guy, great off the ground, good fun guy to be around off the field too. So great all around guy.
I love that. Just taking a little 1-4 anger out on you guys.
Yeah. Definitely have been the recipient of quite a few of those hacks.
Nice. You give it back to him when he gets it on the ride?
Usually somebody else gets it, unfortunately, but he'll probably try and truck me if I do that on the ride in practice. But
good. I love competitive ball.
Speaking of polls, what's it like when McNulty just absolutely buries one?
Yeah, he gets electric in practice just like he does in the games. He's been lighting it up in the games, and it's great to have a pole in transition that can create offense, and it's a pretty good luxury to have.
Yeah, no doubt, especially in the Patriot League. I think Duke's used to seeing polls like that, right? Athletes in the middle of the field that can make big-time plays like that. Not that the Patriot League doesn't have that, but I think it's probably a little bit more few and far between. So quite the luxury for you guys to have a guy like that for sure.
So I have the luxury of following a lot of you guys on social media, and there's like 10 pictures posted from Loyola's account. One picture kept getting reposted on everyone's story. It got me wondering, what's with number 11?
Wiggs, you can take that one.
At Houston, number 11, aka Sticks, Red Sticks.
Sticks.
Stick. He's just Sticks. He brings the juice. Great guy.
He's a juice guy.
Yeah.
I had that in my notes. I figured it was going to be something like that. I said juice guy question mark.
Yep.
Love that.
We love a locker room guy here in Snap and Tells.
Oh yeah.
All right, boys.
Look at
Dude,
this.
really appreciate both you guys joining us tonight. Hell of a job on Sunday. Huge win. Good luck against Bucknell. Just take care of business and run through the Patriot League. Pumped to watch it.
Roll Dogs.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right.
See you, boys. Be good.
That was fun hearing from some Greyhounds, some old Baltimore stories, give you a little insight about how it kind of goes down there. And it's not surprising to see a win against Duke. The team on the broadcast, I heard they've been playing this game for 23 years. It's been,
I didn't realize that Danowski and Toomey had such a good relationship.
It's a great game. They play every year since the beginning of time, it feels like, and even goes past league play for a lot of the teams. And it's super interesting, the history between this rivalry back and forth. I know my time at Loyola, it was filled with some Duke blowouts and some Duke upsets and some Duke battles. So it had the whole spectrum. So moving on, some top performers from this week. It was a heck of a week. Some big stats. Who do you got?
Coulter Mackesy. I mean, freshman attackman for Princeton, second career start, goes off for 4-2 against a really, really good Rutgers team. I think everybody's probably seen his rollback right to left underhand stinger on Instagram. That kind of broke Instagram this weekend. But Coulter Mackesy, got to give love to the Princeton Tigers.
I love it. I love his number 291.
Yeah,
I'm going with Kevin Lindley. He started off the bat with a ride turnover dunk and never really looked back with this short sticking game plan. He was finishing inside. Another Instagram play he had with Dan Wigley, our cohort on the interview, we talked about a little bit, throwing it over some Duke defenseman's ear, looked like an alley-oop, and it was just a sick finish inside.
Beautiful play.
Scored from the outside, shots, fast breaks, you name it, inside, dodging, turning the corner. He pulled out the whole arsenal, and it was a performance for the ages. I think he tied his record, or maybe he's had 7.5 versus some poor sap on Lafayette, but moving on.
He's leading scorer in program history, right?
Correct.
That's quite the honor at Loyola. That's no joke. A lot of epic players have gone through there, especially on the offensive end. So it's very cool.
One thing we were really excited about this week was Thursday night Lax, and it being a big game. I think we would love to see that more. Yeah,
we want to see that every week. Standalone games are fun. I think it brings the best out of teams and players, and it gives fans a reason to really dial into a game and get to know teams and players. And it just kind of makes for a more meaningful fan experience. As the year goes on, I think about NFL football. Like, the games I really remember are those standalone Sunday, Monday night games, and you really learn a lot about the teams, kind of who they are as a team, and little things about players and little performances and little plays, as opposed to, on Sunday you got Red Zone on and you're just watching 10 games at once, and it's hard to really get a sense of the identity of teams and games and how they unfold. But if there's a standalone game on a Thursday night for the game of lacrosse. You got UNC and Virginia going at it. Beautiful night in Chapel Hill. Like, that's a memorable night, right? And obviously we've said it enough, but you got Quint, Kark, Anish in the box. Like, that's just a time to grab your popcorn and just appreciate the game of lax.
Absolutely. And it brings the best out of the production too. You get replays.
Totally.
You get there's not like 50 games going on where it's like, these couple, we won't have replays, or we won't have
crews are spread out, all that.
And they're tight. They're tight. I think it's a tight production. It's like that Monday night football vibe. Everyone gets around the TV. All the alumni are watching. I think it definitely pumps your viewership. I think it's a great sell for recruits too. If you could have a couple staple games you play on those nights, I think that's only a win for the program. So we'd like to see more of that.
There should be a Thursday night game every week. It should be a big game. It should be an event.
Yeah. One thing new we're going to do on Snapping Cows moving forward is give some love to the women's game. They're a big part of the college lacrosse scale. And it's a hell of a talent pool out there in college women's lacrosse, starting with the best Torin winner last year, Charlotte North.
Charlotte North is unbelievable. I've really grown a lot of love for her game in recent weeks. I'm starting to get more into women's lacrosse. Charlotte North has 41 points through 7 games. She may be the best player in the history of the college women's game. I think that's might be safe to say. I will admit I'm not exactly a historian of the college women's game. So, please somebody, let me know if I'm coming out of left field here, but she's unbelievable. I mean, her speed, quickness, physicality, like, it's unmatched. I've never seen anything like it in the women's game. And the release points on her shot. I mean, she's dodging from X, running past the cage towards the opposite end line, stinging low to high shots on the run. Like, I've never seen that before. It's unbelievable.
She has an absolute hammer on her, and catching, if you're a goalie eyeing her down in the 8 when she's got one of those free shots, like, it's getting a little crazy with what the women can do with their sticks and how much hook. I remember throwing it around at Loyola with some of the girls, and they'd have way more hook than I had in my pocket. My pocket was 4 inches deeper, and it just, the click off the top plastic snaps up off at ridiculous velocity. A dominant player and again, we're no professionals on the women's game to any sort, but a player that reminds me of this hype and dominance is Taylor Cummings, who is a multiple Torton winner from Maryland. Stud in the pro game. So you got to give her some respect and think about, I'm sure there's some historians, the Jen Adams, the old legends of the women's games that we're not fluent with yet. But looking at the women's landscape right now, I think it's honestly the top 13 teams, and then the rest is kind of, on the outskirts, because, Boston College 8-0. North Carolina 8-0, Q 6-2, Maryland 6-0, Northwestern 5-2. So Loyola 6-2, shout out. Duke 8-1. So you see these teams kind of, Michigan bumping up the ranks. So you see these teams kind of having a serious start to the season. They also play a lot of games, which I really love.
Yeah, there are a lot of midweek games, and I've noticed that when you look at their end of season records, the game tally is very high, which is cool. Mm-hmm. I'm all for fewer practices and more games. I love that. Also, another thing that's pretty cool is a ton of high scoring games. Like, I'm looking at this Princeton San Diego State game. Princeton won 22-17, like, ton of high scoring games. And another thing that jumps out at me when I look at these box scores and schedules, the schools, like, I love it. Oregon, San Diego State, Coastal
Pac-12,
Carolina, baby. Vandy, SEC, Pac-12 schools everywhere. Like, it's freaking
You mentioned
awesome.
Vandy. I saw Paige Fitterin this week had a nifty little inside finish. Shout out Paige for having a great season. The town as well. I love women's lacrosse being in the Pac-12. I think it's spreading the game out to the West Coast in a serious manner. The skill that these high scores are coming from this insane kind of evolution of the women's game, where you're seeing girls come up to the island and flick it past their ankles by their knees, kind of like a Lyle Thompson-esque backhand shots, a lot of no looks, a lot of nifty behind the back finishes. And then they have this free shot with the 8 when you get in shooting space, and it's a injury concern, so that they blow it and they give you a free shot outside the 8, and these girls are pinning corners.
They're stinging them. It's kind of unbelievable. The evolution of the game, and in particular, like the actual stick, like the physical stick has been monumental for the women's game. It allows these girls to be much more creative. It's a ton of fun. I'm excited to keep watching more. I'm buying the women's game. I'm bullish on women's lacrosse for sure.
It's great. Transferring back to men's, because women's has an extended tournament. They have more teams in their tournament. Yeah. It's massive. Do we need the men's to follow down that path to make it more teamed NCAA tournament?
So I am a huge proponent. Again, I said it a couple minutes ago. Fewer practices, more games. I'm all for expanding the NCAA tournament on the men's side. I'm not sure if you need to go all the way to 32, but if you could do something with 24 teams, give a few teams at the top a bye, I think it'd just be awesome. Why not
a little more March
games?
Madness?
Yeah, exactly.
A little bit more March Madness, because you'd see a team, in the playoffs make some noise, like maybe a High Point or a Richmond. They're always getting kind of stuck.
Yeah, instead of High Point playing at Virginia, High Point draws a slightly lesser team, right? They got a chance to get rolling, get a W, and head to Klockner next weekend, coming off an NCAA, first NCAA tournament win in program history. And what's really, like you just think about the teams this year that are bound to be left out of the tournament. I mean, the Ivy League right now is 6 teams deep. All right. Like, I'm going to give Dartmouth credit for putting together as good a year as they have in a while. They're doing well, but look, they're not an NCAA tournament team yet. But I'm gonna slot Penn at the top. But Cornell, Princeton, Yale, who knows who the actual top team is. Mm-hmm. But then outside of Penn, Yale, Princeton, Cornell, you have Brown and Harvard, who are legit teams, right? Who can go toe to toe with almost anybody, and that's just the Ivy League. You've got 6 teams in there. 3 of those teams are probably going to be left out, and then the Big Ten is insanely deep. We've seen what's happened to Rutgers in recent years. I think it's time to expand the NCAA tournament.
I love that, and you also just made your case for which league you think is the best in the league.
The Ivy League is the best league in the country. Mark it down. I wish I had been more bold. I think all the listeners are probably about finished hearing me talk about the Ivy League, but unfortunately, these teams have made it so I cannot be.
I'm here for it, brother.
But I wish that I had been a little bit more bold in the beginning of the year and said the Ivy League is going to be the best conference in the country. You got to give these kids a hell of a lot of credit. They went over 700 days without playing a game, and they're legitimately 6 teams deep that can play with absolutely anybody in the country.
I love it.
It's unbelievable.
I love it.
Kyle, who do you think the best conference is? You still going with the ACC?
The Patriot. No.
Look, no. I will give the Patriot League some credit.
I'm going with the ACC. You don't want to see any ACC team, including Cuse, in the tournament. Like a Penn Cuse getting Owen Heltz back late in the season. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. It's just an interesting thing. I probably know ACC has lost a bunch of games, but I just want to ask you this right now. Who do you have, Notre Dame or Penn?
Penn.
Is it a dogfight or is it a blowout?
Of course it's a dogfight. I don't think Corrigan and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish are going to get blown out come May. I don't think that at all. But I think Penn is a better team. I'd rather be in Penn's locker room right now. But let me just give you this stat. And this isn't even my Ivy League. This is the Big Ten. The Big Ten's 5-2 head-to-head against the ACC this year. Both of those two losses, the only two times that the ACC has beaten the Big Ten this year is Hopkins. The Big Ten is –
Well, Maryland has a strong representative in the Big Ten that accounts for a lot of those wins. They're undefeated.
Ohio State has 2 of those 5 wins against UNC and Notre Dame.
I like the Big Ten. I don't think they're better than the ACC, and I'm not going to go as far to say as the Ivy League's better than the ACC from what I've seen.
Right. Okay, fine. You have – so I want to ask you this. I'm not going to sit here and argue till I'm blue in the face. Like, if somebody's saying the ACC is the best conference in the country, I'm going to understand that. But who's your 2, Big Ten or Ivy?
Ivy. I'm taking the Ivy League 100% with the exemption of Maryland because they're a national championship contender. Like, what Ivy League is like almost a shoe-in Final Four? That's not going to get upset in the Elite Eight. When's the last time Penn went to an Elite Eight?
In 2019 when they lost an overtime game to Yale.
That was a burner. That's
another reason why the NCAA tournament needs to be expanded. In 2019, Penn and Yale had 2 absolute slugfest games, one in the regular season and then one in the Ivy League championship. And then the NCAA tournament selection committee couldn't have fumbled this more.
They always do it because it's convenient and close.
They set it up so if Penn and Yale, who were legitimate top 5 teams, won their first round game, that they would meet for a third time in the quarterfinals. The fact that wasn't a Final Four matchup was criminal. But I rest my case. That's another reason why the NCAA tournament should be expanded.
Hey, I love the Ivy League. It's I think it's a different kind of ball than what you see in the ACC. I think it's very systematic, and they have great players that fit in those systems. I think the teams are extremely well coached, and they're already gelling.
Totally.
In the ACC, I think you have a lot of transfers. You have a lot of pieces that don't really necessarily make well for a big early season start. Do I think Duke could win the national championship? No, but maybe. They're gonna be in the final Elite Eight, and then you don't know what happens. If they're in Elite Eight playing someone,
I wouldn't be so sure they're gonna make the quarterfinals. Like, I think if I had to put my money on it right now, okay, I think Duke's gonna make the quarternals, but I wouldn't be so sure of it. Like, they're not gonna be a top 4 seed.
Coming off, saying it doesn't matter who they play in the tournament.
What if they play Loyola again?
If they have the same day facing off, it's going to be a problem in short stick.
So I'm saying, like, they're not going to be a top 4 seed. Like, what if they play?
They almost lost to Loyola last year, and they had Michael Sowers. It was an overtime loss, and Robertson.
That's what I'm saying. You can't guarantee they're going to be a quarterfinal team.
I'm not guaranteeing it. I'm just saying it has a chance. Whereas,
yeah, of course.
And what would you have them ranked on the scale of the ACC right now? Second?
Virginia won.
And then it's kind of we'll see.
I guess honestly, dude,
we'll see when ACC play happens. This is a good conversation. We're gonna keep this conversation going between the Ivy and the ACC.
But the murkiness in the ACC after Virginia, like right there, I just kind of struggled. I'm like, oh, who is the 2 in the ACC?
It's true. No one's been dominant as we thought it would, because of the reasons of the early season stumbles. I think a lot of their main pieces that come into fruition late in the season, where you're not pulling, I think it'll shake out. We'll see what happens in ACC play. We don't have to go too far into it right now, but something that we'll clearly be discussing for length on this through the rest of the season is the debate with the Ivy League and the ACC in 2022. I think it's a great one.
Also,
and the Big Ten,
move on,
the Big Ten just right on the heels of the ACC, because clearly
what a pleasure it is to have like a 3-horse race within the conferences right now. Like it wouldn't be nearly as fun if the ACC was just clearly dominant, and it's really cool to see this parity. And speaking of parity, I just want to give a little bit of love to the Patriot League after the past 3 or 4 days. Yeah. I've been pretty low on the Patriot League. Kyle's been pretty low on the Patriot League. Massive win for Loyola, obviously. Really big win for the Bucknell Bison. Look, Penn State's huge. Penn State's 2-6, but probably the best 2-6 team ever. I thought Penn State was going to win by 7 or 8 goals, to be totally honest. I thought that was going to be kind of a game for them where they could kind of get back on track after some disappointing losses heading into the Big Ten. Penn State has real players. So credit to Bucknell pulling off a midweek upset against the Penn State Nittany Lions. But
also a game we didn't talk about, but we can move on. But one thing, it was on ESPN. It's every year it should be a circled game in your schedule. It's not this year just because the lack of wins and strength of teams is Cuse Hopkins, and it was Petro's return to Hopkins, which was emotional for him.
Yeah,
built a program there.
It was a pretty good game. Hopkins cleaned up the clears, which is honestly the reason why they won the game. I was kind of shocked that they won. They shot the ball pretty well. Syracuse did not shoot the ball very well.
I mean, it just looks like Syracuse relies on 2 players, and that's kind of how their offense goes. And Hopkins had a lot of guys step up that are usually in the scoring column. So that was the kind of game, and Hopkins deserved it. So shout out to them.
Both of those teams will have ample opportunity, playing in the ACC and the Big Ten. Will have ample opportunity to get more airtime on Snap and Towels. They've got some big games coming up.
Absolutely.
But enough about last week. Moving on to our quick picks. We got a bunch of fun games this weekend. I'm excited. Pretty damn excited.
We also, we'll be competing with March Madness basketball. Everyone's getting all yazzed up. Don't forget about these games, people.
I know what I'll be watching. And taking notes on. So we just spoke about the Patriot League. Let's start it off. Lehigh Army, who do you got?
Ooh, that's a good one. But I think Lehigh's been hurt by a little injury bug. I'm going Army.
Yeah, I'm going Army as well. I think it'll be a good game. Lehigh's tough. They play good defense. But Army's going to be too much to handle here.
It's at Army. They have a great team this year. Senior laden. I'm going Army at home with the big win in front of the Cadets.
Yep, no doubt. Yale Cornell.
I got Cornell. I think Yale is still finding their rhythm. They let up a bunch of goals against a good Denver offense, but not the best we've seen. So I think Yale keeps up their stout defense and good ball movement.
Cornell. You think Cornell does?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think Yale is finding their rhythm, but I think they're going to find it this weekend and pull off what now is a little bit of an upset, just given Cornell's first half of the season. It's going to be a marquee
just know
win.
Each other so well in the Ivy League.
Yeah.
You don't know.
It's going to be a marquee win for Yale. I think it's going to be a huge win, a tournament resume win for the Yale Bulldogs. Couldn't be more excited to see Ivy League play really get underway, and Yale's going to start off with a banger of a W.
That Cornell, just saying.
Yeah, but Ithaca, they'll get up there and win, no doubt. Michigan, Notre Dame, a game we've talked about plenty. Who do you got?
Both teams need a bounce back win. I'm going Notre Dame. I think they're going to figure out this offensive problem and hopefully come up with a better defensive game plan and not short stick Josh Sawada or some crazy like that.
Yeah, so I think the good news for Notre Dame is with Ohio State, they probably felt as though they had to do that with somebody in the midfield. I don't think Michigan has the threats that Ohio State does.
I don't think they had to do it, and I'm not watching every game on film.
I don't either. I agree with you, but I have seen both Michigan and Ohio State play. I watched Michigan very closely this past weekend. I don't think they have the weapons to keep up with Notre Dame. We have discussed that nobody at Notre Dame has actually separated themselves and taken over a game. But Notre Dame's incredibly deep. They're hungry for a W. They need this win heading into ACC play. I think Notre Dame wins here by 5 or 6 goals.
At Notre Dame, too.
Yeah. Another huge game in the Ivy League, Harvard-Brown.
I'm taking Brown. I think their attack's too good, but I think it's going to be a dogfight. I'm going to take Brown.
I'm taking Brown as well. I think Harvard has a bit of a letdown after what's a pretty big win in Ann Arbor. I think Brown will win this game. Again, Ivy League, Penn, Princeton.
I'm going Princeton.
Yeah, I'm taking Penn. I think it'll be an excellent game.
I know what Cam's going to be watching.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to have Ivy League sports on, Ivy League lacrosse on all Saturday. It's the first actually, Patriot League plays underway, but we're not as concerned with the Patriot League this year as we've discussed. But Ivy League play is really underway this weekend, and I think there's like literally 4 epic games. Maryland, Virginia.
I'm going Maryland.
Probably maybe the most anticipated game in a long time.
I'm excited. This is a huge game. Both undefeated. I don't know when the last time Virginia has played Maryland undefeated halfway through the season with just stacked. I mean, Maryland hasn't skipped a beat. Virginia's offense hasn't stopped pumping in goals since 3 years ago. So I'm going Maryland.
Yeah, I might squeeze a little bit of this game in between the Ivy League games. We'll see. But no, I'm taking Virginia here. I think it's going to be an incredible game. Incredible game. One thing about Maryland, and maybe they'll prove to do this again. A lot of their wins, aside from their 24-6 win against Albany, it's like a lot of 11-9, 11-9. 12-8 wins. I haven't seen Maryland have the explosive day outside of their day against Albany. I know Virginia can explode against anybody. So I think Virginia is going to explode just a little bit more for like a 17-14 victory.
I like that analysis. High Point UNC, who you got?
High Point.
Wow.
Panthers, baby. Also,
wow. This is at High Point. UNC leaving their little home for the first time this season. 7
to go down the
games.
Road to the country club at High Point.
Literally. That's a hell of a call. I'm going UNC. I think they're going to bounce back after seeing the mistakes they made against Virginia, having some confidence coming out of that loss. Some losses can be helpful. I think it's kind of that bounce back game that Chris Gray is just unguardable. I like High Point's attack. I know you like him more. But I think Virginia's clamping down defensively and kind of figuring it out down there. And I think Colin Krieg and Chris Gray aren't going to lose to a High Point team.
Yeah, I think it's going to be another marquee win for the SoCon. Denver, Ohio State.
I'm going to Ohio State.
Yeah, I'm rolling with the
It's in the big house, so no one's going to be looking at the clock.
The horseshoe.
So. Oh God, the horseshoe.
Don't get it twisted. Don't get that one twisted.
That's treason, dude. Hopefully people aren't listening this far into the episode, but
probably not, right? No, I'm going Buckeyes here. I think Ohio State's kind of a wagon this year. I don't think Denver has the players to play with Ohio State this year.
I think
marquee matchups. Who's your favorite game of the weekend?
I mean, you already know. I think it's Maryland, Virginia, not 10 times out of 10, and then once on Sunday in Audi Field. I think that place is going to be bumping.
I hope it's bumping. It's bumping.
It would be fun. I mean, College Park, I don't think it's like that fun. Like, it's a huge stadium, and they don't fill it. They fill a quarter of it on a huge game like this. Great. Klockner's electric. They have the stands. They have the hill. If it's a rainy day, I think Audi Field is going to be like they used to do those showcase tournaments in the middle of the season at MetLife, where
Yep.
where Duke would play like Cuse, and there's a lot of sick stuff on display.
Yep.
The Big City Classic, it was
It's a
called.
good call. That was feels like a long time ago now. It's probably like 2013 or 14 was the last Big City Classic. But yeah, those are cool events.
No, those are great, and I wish they threw another game in this, like if Penn Princeton played first or second or something like that, and had two just hammers.
They totally could. They're in proximity to DC.
Everyone's right there. All the kids come from there. It's going to be a wicked atmosphere. I'm calling, and the call is going to be great as well. So I'm going UVA Maryland, like I said.
I hope it's an epic atmosphere. I really hope we're not running into a Penn State situation a few weeks ago.
I can bet my life that won't happen again. First of all, between the music acts and the national anthem was literally electric. So
yes,
not was. That, but the halftime show, the lack of broadcasting, that was a gong show of a broadcast. I can guarantee Maryland, Virginia, Audi Field.
Yeah, no, they're not missing this one.
A1 broadcast.
Yeah, no, I really hope you're right. I think it's gonna be a great game. Cannot wait to watch it. I'm gonna go Penn Princeton. Big surprise here, going with an Ivy League matchup. But really, just look, Penn's had so much success in recent years. They're rolling right now. They're a top 4 or 5 team. Princeton, aside from some really bright spots with Michael Sowers, it kind of hasn't had a lot of team success in the last 15 years. So it's kind of so it's like, okay, it's kind of new blood now.
Schreiber.
Princeton.
How long?
Yeah, sure, but Schreiber didn't play in a lot of great teams, unfortunately. Yeah. I think Princeton's going to give Penn a really, really good game. This is a huge game for both these teams. I think Princeton is going to treat it like the Super Bowl. And Penn has been playing in these games, seems like 4 or 5 years now. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a really good atmosphere.
Yeah, it's going to be a hell of a way to start a 3-game stretch for Princeton, going Penn, Yale, then Brown.
Absurd.
So I know what Cam's in the next 3 weeks. Who is marquee matchups? You guys don't have to listen to the end of the episodes, because it's going to be the rest of Princeton's schedule minus a couple in there. But dude, this late night episode has been another banger. The interview, thanks to Aiden Olmstead, Dan Wigley. I thought this was tremendous. Cam making it happen from the bathroom studio, which is only rightfully so, as us being towel snappers.
Pleasure to be here, Kyle. Thanks for joining me.
Always. Listeners, thank you for showing up.